Every founder hits a wall. The strategy that took you from, say, 0 to 1 million just stops working when you try to hit 3, 5, or 10 million. You push harder and nothing moves. And you can't work out what's actually gone wrong. Today, I'm joined by a man who's what I call Silicon Valley's top founders call when they hit a wall in their business. And for 30 years, Julian Lighton has been chewing on one question: why do some people and some companies make that giant leap forward while others that are just as talented never actually do? Welcome to The Business Strategist, the show for CEOs and founders ready to scale fast, lead smarter, and build a business that doesn't rely on them. I'm Adam Strong, award-winning strategist, former elite athlete, international speaker, and 3 times best-selling author. After 3 decades in business, I know exactly what it takes to grow, scale, and exit with impact. Each week, I dive into real conversations with industry experts, bold entrepreneurs, and clients navigating the uphill struggles of business, giving you the tools and the strategies to create more profit, more freedom, and more impact. Let's get into it. My guest today is Julian Lighton. He spent 12 years at McKinsey, ran multi-billion-dollar businesses at Cisco and Hitachi, and has been the chief strategy officer at 4 public companies. In 2020, he took Corsair gaming company public. These days, he coaches senior leaders at the likes of Anthropic, Microsoft, Adobe, just to mention a few. But his specialism, which is really interesting, he's the person to call when your team needs to make a huge decision and nobody knows the right answer. And he just released a new book called Navigating Your Next, which became a international bestseller. I did briefly take a real glimpse into Julian's world. So without further ado, Julian, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here, Adam. Great to talk to you and your audience.
Likewise. Really excited about today. And, you know, you're in California, you're British. I don't blame you from leaving the UK, by the way. So, but I know we've got such a widely international audience here, which is really, really good. But I'd love to kind of get a little bit of a snapshot just for our listeners, and certainly for me. You know, you've been doing this for 3 decades. I'd love to kind of like get into the idea of where this, I suppose, fascination or where the catalyst started for you, where you became acutely fascinated with why some people scale, some people stall, and kind of tying that back to some of the experience that you had as chief strategy officer in some of the big companies out there. Love to hear from that.
Yeah, sure. So my journey, as I suspect most people who are listening, has been very much of one of navigating, right? Of kind of hitchhiking. You don't go directly where you want to go. You have to take a bike, take a walk, take a plane, take a bus, take a ship, and you navigate in the general direction of something.
Yeah.
And so what's been fascinating from my perspective over the 35 plus years that I've been doing this is that some people do that well and some people do not do that well. I've been very lucky to have kind of a front row seat to be able to see what people like John Chambers or Larry Ellison or Zuckerberg or Bill Gates, Steve Ballmer, etc. Work with all of these folks to be able to understand what it is they do well,
yes,
and what they don't do well, and how they think about this. And I've also reflected on my journey, and I've spent a lot of time, particularly with very talented people. So I do a lot of work for McKinsey and Company, coaching their associates and their partners. And what's become evident is that there is a pattern. There is a pattern of a simple set of rules, and those rules are highly observable. So what do I mean by that? So number one, and the most important thing, is all of the people who are successful in their careers know what they want.
Yep.
Right? There is a self-reflexive question of being able to ask yourself, what do I want? And being able to provide an answer that unlocks the puzzle. So number one, they all absolutely no exceptions. They all know what they want. And by the way, that can change over time, but they're very specific about it. Number two, they're very focused. They have what you might call radical focus, because they understand that in order to get what you want, you have to say no to a bunch of things.
I
For a
love
couple
that.
of reasons, right? One, focus and being able to describe to other people.
Mhm.
Number two, time and energy, right? There's what's called the rule of three. Human beings are very bad at doing more than three things. You can do one thing excellently, two things well, three things averagely. Start trying to do more than three things, and your failure rate goes up dramatically. This is one of the
Agreed.
problems of management and leadership.
Yes.
Okay, so they focus radically. That lets them spend time and energy on the things that matter.
Mhm.
Number three, they make a commitment to themselves.
Okay.
So if they are not committed, why should anybody else be committed to getting what they want?
Mhm.
And commitment shows up in a number of ways. Number one, it shows up in terms of a absolute determination to get the thing. Number two, discipline, right? So there are tons and tons of people who are massively talented and incredibly motivated, but they don't get what they want,
Yes.
right? But discipline will. So if you think Nike, right, just do it,
Yeah.
right? Motivation won't get you up at 5 o'clock in the morning in the wind and the rain and the snow, but discipline will. Okay, so
So
they
true.
have great discipline and great commitment to themselves. Number three is they are fabulous at being able to test what works and what doesn't work.
Mhm.
A/B testing.
Okay.
So lots and lots of famous people, Zuckerberg, you can talk to Mark Andreessen, all of these guys in the Valley will tell you that this is one of the things about founders, what you were just experiencing, right? So how
Yes.
do you get out of being stuck? You try, because you don't know what's going to work, but you try a set of rational experiments. And based on that, you then do more, right?
Mm.
What works, you do more of. What doesn't work, you do less of, or you stop doing. And
Mm.
so they're really, really, really good at being curious and experimenting in the
Mm.
pursuit of something.
Yeah.
Number four, they understand that it means moving from I to we. This is the fundamental of leadership. We haven't
Yes.
changed very much in 40,000 years, right? And so if you're going to get something done, right, you want to get what you want, most of the time you're going to have to do it with and through other people.
Mhm.
And so you are going to have to lead. And in leading, you need to move from what I want to what we want. So they're very, very good at being able to explain, again, in a focused, disciplined, committed way, this is what we want. And they answer that question in two distinct ways, a
Mm.
know why and a care why. The know why is the logical, right? This is why we are doing it. We are going to follow this strategy to be able to do this thing that will beat our competitors.
Okay.
The care why is what's in it for you. Why do you want to do this? Why are we collectively going to do this?
Okay. That's
Yeah,
good.
that could be development, it could be maturity, it could be incentives, it could be experience, it could be any number of things.
Mhm.
And so those combinations of things, right, they are extraordinary at being able to follow that chain of causation. And you can go take a look at just about anybody's career. You will find that they have these underlying elements. And so part of what I do, both with individuals and teams, is say, okay, first of all, let's ask you, right, these questions. Let's go through this checklist to understand how much you understand, how aware, what you
Mhm.
do, whether it be a founder or a scaler. And in that process, we often find that there are unanswered pieces, or that there are things that are not executed well, or that there are pieces that they haven't yet come to terms with. And
Mhm.
so my journey through that process has been one of curiosity and discovery, both trying stuff out myself, navigating, right, hitchhiking through my career, and also observing others over and over and over again in the different organizations and instantiations that I've been through.
So what you're kind of alluding to, should we say, are effectively your core fascination of pattern recognition within human behavior, I'm assuming. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I found when I was younger that I was a distinctive problem solver.
Hmm.
I was very good at pattern recognition. I was very good at decision making, and I was very good at problem solving.
Yes.
And so I turned those things that I was good at as a consultant
Hmm.
into trying to identify, right, the why, the what, and the how
Hmm.
of career success. Now, I didn't really start doing that until my 40s. And so my 20s and 30s, like most people's careers, were a series of rational experiments. But
Yep.
the more of those that I did, the more the pattern became clear. And the
Hmm.
more I could actually start to apply the discipline and commitment to my own practice in terms of getting what I wanted.
I suppose it's like a checklist of the things that you're recognizing, whether it be to improve culture, whether it be to improve scalability. Like, what exactly are,
Okay.
I mean, in terms of like problem and challenge, like they
Yeah.
come to you for a specific reason, isn't it? Are you is there a kind of saying in your mind that you're kind of like working through? Does that make sense? Like a framework of some
Yeah.
sort?
So all human beings,
Mm,
right, suffer from two different sets of things that plague them.
okay.
There is the problem that they're trying to solve,
Yes.
and there's how they relate to the problem.
Mhm.
So let's take our founder that you were positing their issue is they've got to a certain stage. So there's the problem itself. How do I scale?
Mm,
That could be a revenue problem. It could be a cost problem. It could be an organization problem. There's the problem. How do I relate to that problem? Do I feel competent? Imposter syndrome. Do
yes.
I have the right relationships? So can I be honest about it?
Hmm.
Do I understand what that means for me? Right. And so everybody who shows up with me has a combination of these things. Right. And so you can start talking to them about how do we actually solve the problem itself? We can build a sandpit. What are the options? Let's weigh those options. That's a more mechanistic, skill driven set of things.
Mm,
And then on the other side, you've got a much more mindset set
yes.
of things, right? What is my motivation? What's my aspiration? What are my beliefs and biases? What's my decision making process? Everything tends to be a combination of these.
Hmm.
Now, you asked what the kind of diagnosis is.
Mm,
My walking somebody through what we just talked about
yes.
allows me to understand what they're trying to do. So, what do you want? What are you actually really trying to do here? And therefore, okay, great. If you are trying to build something, what are the boulders? What are the problems that are getting in the way of that? Are
Yes.
they logical or are they emotional? Are they your problems or are they our problems? Are they things that are tied up in your history and the way in which you see the world, or are they things that you have difficulty in terms of conceptualizing or
Mm,
changing?
mm,
And so now we can start to, put things on the table, right? Strategy is as much about what you're not going to do as you are going to do. So again, the focus thing. So we're going to take a bunch of those away, either because you don't want to solve them or because they're not a priority, they're not in
yes.
sequence.
Right.
So now we can start to have a real conversation where we're sharing, right? How are we actually going to be able to do this? The why you're going to do it, the what you're actually trying to achieve. That creates clarity.
Hmm.
So your innovation, right? The feeling stuck, the emotional hijacking goes down, and your rational capacity goes up, and your ability to make sense of the world and find purposeful action goes up.
Hmm.
So it's not a set in stone methodology, but it is a way of helping somebody understand their own world
Hmm.
and understand what it is they want to do. And it falls back upon a set of best practices that are highly observable.
Yeah. And I think what you've one thing that I took from what you just explained to me is this increasing amount of being able to become more self-aware as a leader and as a founder. And for you guys that are listening in, by the way, I'd love to hear back from you guys. I think Julian's given us a great insight as to the certainly about sort of. I think you mentioned 5 or 6 different pattern recognitions that you look for, and it would be just great to hear from some of our listeners about some of the pattern recognitions that maybe you lack or need to make some improvement to in your own business. Because what you'll find is that if there's certain things that you do need to make improvements to with regards to these patterns, is there might also be a correlation to why maybe your business is stuck or why you can't scale or whatever it might be. So just wanted to put that out there. So it's a good one. I like that. Good stuff. Now, one of the things that we talked about, I think in our last conversation offline, which was the whole ideology of going from, from founder to scale up. It's one of the hardest transitions that a leader can make more specifically. I suppose in plain terms, like what actually is breaking? What when someone tries to take a business from, say, $1 million to, say, $5 million, because that's a massive jump. Like, what are the things that you start to see crumbling, or the things that you kind of, if you're bought into a business and things haven't been working for whatever reason, you'll know straight away why they're not working. I'd love to know why is it so difficult for that transitional period, and what are the kind of the psychological the psychological barriers?
Sure. Okay. So here's the kind of diagnosis that. So it's less, by the way, in the 1 to 5 or 1 to 10.
Okay.
Mostly it's in it's once you get above 50 people.
Yes.
Right?
Okay.
The break point is about 50 people.
Yeah.
So it's on a personal basis. There are a set of factors in terms of, business model, revenue scaling that we can talk about, but they tend to be a little bit separate. But typically founders begin to struggle once you get beyond a defined number of relationships where they can know everybody themselves and where they can intervene on a one-to-one basis.
Okay.
That's the classic snapping point. And generally, by the way, for human beings, the number is about 50.
Yeah.
Right? It's very difficult to maintain any kind of, real relationship with more than about 50 people. Okay.
That makes sense.
So what happens? Well, okay. So first of all, let's use our model we just discussed, right? There's the problem and how I relate to problem. So on the problem side, all businesses are just maths, or math, as the Americans would say. So there's, it may be different for government or academic or not for profit, but all for profit is just maths. Set of inputs, set of outputs, set of things that happen in the middle. So most founders are very good at an element of this, but they've never been taught. They don't really understand how that set of flows work. So they could be great at product development. They might be great at selling. They could be great at business development, et cetera, et cetera. But actually seeing the system, is one of the things that becomes a problem. Because it requires you to be an expert at multiple things, right? And very few people are. And so in order to solve for that problem, you have to move from you doing it and your understanding to our understanding. That's a very difficult transition, right? In terms of hiring expertise, in terms of building it as a team, and in terms of trusting it, right? And understanding the way other people look at the problem. So your first problem is actually being able to conceptualize the system and how it actually works. Because how you sell, right, an initial set of lighthouse accounts, and you go from 1 to 10 customers to 50 customers, is a very different deal.
Different dynamic, right? Absolutely.
Right, very different dynamic. How you equip yourself for the financial processes, for the HR processes, for the customer success processes. Now it's no longer best effort. Individuals, you have to actually think about how the team is doing things and how the team of teams is doing things and how process begins to kick in. So your first problem is you have to reconceptualize the business. You have to understand what the flows are, and you have to start to fix those problems, right? The image that's often used in the Valley is spinning plates. Yeah, you remember those old vaudeville acts?
We're familiar with those terms. Absolutely.
Right. And so you've got to get used to kind of running around. One thing breaks loose and another. So how do you go about doing it? The answer is don't do it all yourself. That's the primary lesson is founderitis, founder mode, as Andreessen would, that's a bad idea. Doesn't scale, right? And leads to disempowered teams and bad cultures and bad outputs. Fine when you're starting, 100%. But doesn't scale over time.
No.
So that's first thing. Second thing is emotionally, how do I relate to these problems? Well, okay, so as we just discussed, you've got to have a team.
Yep.
So now I have to trust these people. So I'm not going to tell them what to do. I have to ask them how to do things.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm shifting from my understanding to our understanding of the world. All teams do a certain set of things. So all of them, right, understand why we're here. Why are we actually in the room doing the thing? You and I discussed this previously. We might come back to it with the so-called woolly mammoth problem. What are we trying to do? Number two, they figure out what the problems and opportunities are in doing that. So you have to have a common way of looking at what you're trying to achieve.
Yes.
Number three, they divide those problems and opportunities into decisions that need to get made.
Mm-hmm.
And they formulate a way of making decisions. Number four, they allocate resources to those decisions.
Yep.
Number five, they measure the outcome of doing the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Number six, they learn, hopefully. Right?
You'd like to think so.
Yeah. And number seven, they take corrective action.
Yeah.
So all teams go through this, and all teams follow the same cycle, as we know, right? The famous Tuckman's cycle of forming, storming, norming, performing in a journey. So all teams are doing these things. There are no teams that do things differently. They all do this. And so the question for a leader, for a founder is, how am I helping a group of people? What role do I play? And how do I help that team go from forming through norming? And how do I help them do that 7 things better?
Yeah.
Right? That becomes the piece where you identify what's your role, what are you responsible for, and how are you showing up, and how do you help these other human beings do this better? How do I get me out of doing and into leading?
Yeah.
Right. And so by having these conversations, you unstick people.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there, the little light bulb goes on of, oh, that's what I'm doing. I'm intervening too often. I'm squashing the team, or I'm not being specific about what good looks like, or I'm not providing them with a decision-making framework so they can actually figure out, what we want to do. We want to do this more than this, or we're not all on the same page and seeing it in the same way. Mm-hmm. Now I have a way of being able to interpret reality, right? So you were talking about awareness. So our first stage is awareness. Our second stage is asking, what do you want to be different? Our third stage is back to the rule of 3, is turning that into a plan and sequence, right? So what are your priorities, and what sequence are you going to do them in? And then our final question is, what are the habits and behaviors and practices? How are you actually going to change? Because we change by doing things.
Yes.
Right. And so every single person I work with, it's the same routine. And you can therefore, install this as an operating system. Mm-hmm. So I don't have to be there over time. Right. But it becomes a way of being, both for the individual, the CEO or CEO and chairman, and their team, so that they can self-diagnose, they can become aware, they can work this and get better and better and better. So businesses that scale successfully, mm-hmm. this is what they're doing, right? It's not just about the business model or the product or the market. All of that is necessary, but not sufficient.
So what you're really describing is, number one, you're describing the structural deficiencies, because every business has a structural deficiency. Then you're also talking about the emotional, because there's going to be and I see this week in and week out with the conversations that I have with founders, right? And the struggles that they go through of this kind of what I call founder dependency.
Yes.
Because that's what it is. It's founder dependency. And sometimes it can be very difficult to, what's the word I was alluding to? It's very difficult to kind of take yourself away from something which you're very attached to. Mm-hmm. It's a bit like me. I'm a parent, for example. I don't know if you've got kids, Julian, but as kids get older, for example, it's like, you allow them to become more and more independent, and then suddenly one day it's like, oh no, they don't need me, type of thing. It's a little bit like, it's so difficult. But it's also the same for a founder in a business. Sometimes I found that true to me, true to myself.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's very interesting. So if you think about it from a mental model point of view,
yes,
there are broadly, and this obviously is a massive generalization, but there are broadly three camps of CEOs. There are what we might call iconoclasts. This is the majority, not all, but the majority of founders, typically technology businesses, where they really want to blow up part of the industry. They want to change the industry. They see a problem and they're enormously personally committed to, that thing, changing that thing. And so they want to do things differently. They're the kind of people that, if you say to them, I want to go in the direction of, they want to go there tomorrow.
Yes.
Right? They have a great sense of urgency. They have an enormous personal commitment. They identify themselves with the change. Very often you hear this story in the Valley of, I want to change the world. We are changing the world. They deeply want to believe that story, that dialogue about themselves.
Yes.
So that's model one. Those folks have a very high degree of identification with the change and with the business. And so anything that goes wrong is a reflection of them. Somebody leaving, something not working out, et cetera, it becomes a personal problem. So it goes from being a problem, rational, logical, separate, to being about how I relate to that thing. Model two, competitive CEOs. These you typically don't find in early stage businesses. These are more your scaling or large scale CEOs. I work, for both Ballmer and John Chambers, classic competitive CEOs, where they just want to beat the competition. Right? I want to be number one. So I'm going to design my team and what goes on around me to be able to achieve that outcome. They're very metrics focused. They're very externally market focused, much less product focused, right? And they want a team to basically be able to be really good at the game. So in model one, they want, CEOs like Zuckerberg want people to be more like them. And they're going to have a small team. It's going to be very much about relationships and personal trust. And it's going to be a reflection of them. Model two, less about them and much more about the team. Think here, instead of thinking family, you're thinking about a professional sports team.
Yeah.
I'm going to hire people. I'm going to bring people onto the team because I need them to be positional players to win.
Yeah.
And I'm playing for a particular piece of time, right? Model three, defensive CEO. These you find in academia, you find in not-for-profits, you find in government, particularly highly regulated areas, or private family-based businesses. They want things to be stable. There's a high premium on relationship and continuity and outcomes. So you've got these three rough groups of people who all, right, deal with certain sets of circumstances in different ways. So identifying what kind of person you are and what you're in it for. So I want to change everything. I want to compete. I want stability. So what kind of person are you? Therefore, what problems do you see or opportunities do you see, and how do you want to relate to them? How are you designing your team to be able to do that? Results in very different cultures, very different structures, and very different outcomes.
Hey guys, me again. And I just want to remind you about the Exit Readiness Assessment, the most amazing tool for CEOs and founders that are looking to build a self-managing company. This will help you to identify what's blocking you from helping you to step out your business operations and effectively scale up and eventually exit over the next 12 to 36 months. It gives you a personalized report and you can complete it in less than 4 minutes. All you have to do is head over to readytoexit.scoreapp.com. That's readytoexit.scoreapp.com to get your personalized score. Enjoy. It kind of reminds me, and I know the World Cup's just finished, and so I've been a big fan of the football, of course. I think most people have. And it kind of reminds me of the different coaching styles that you have alluded to, because that's what it is. It's like a different coaching style.
Yes.
And which one do you kind of, see yourself kind of, which one is more correlated and related to you? which is what you're describing. And I actually find that quite fascinating, really. I always like to correlate that back to something like football because it is very much relatable.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, look at Brazil, right? So, the Brazilian coach is one of the world's most famous defensive coaches.
Yes. Yep.
And so what happened was Brazil, stopped playing fast and loose. They scored less goals, but they were tighter.
Yep.
So his belief was we could win through more discipline and through more structure, etc. But that was his outlook, as opposed to, right, French coach.
Oh my God, completely different.
All out attack, right? We're going to, how do we win? We win through scoring more goals.
Yep.
Right. And so long, that's what we're going to do. We're just going to put more points on the board. Completely different philosophies. Both have talented groups of individuals, right? But very, very, very interesting the way that then instantiates itself, both in terms of the structure, the format, right? How many defensive players do you have? Are you playing 4 or 3? How complex or how structured is your midfield, right? What are you doing? So France play with 2 attackers. Yeah, pretty interesting, right? So, you're really pushing out. Are you going to play wingers or not play wingers, right? Are you going to have the high press or a low press?
Yeah.
All of this, is language for people who understand football, etc. but this is a philosophical thing. And so CEOs are architects of their business.
Yes.
And at heart, you have to understand what they're trying to build. So are they a brutalist? Are they a modernist? Are they a classicist? Right? What's the person that you're working with and how do they conceptualize what they want? Because they have to articulate that to the team because they can't do it all, right? The other people are going to have to do it. So do those other people share that same view of the world? And can they work within the structure in order to be able to go and achieve those goals?
Yep. Right? Agreed. I love that. And for you guys that are listening in, by the way, man, first of all, I hope you're enjoying our conversations, me and Julian. I think that what I love about our conversation is that he's very much on point with regards to like, these are things that you need to work on. These are things that could apply to you more than anything else. And just a bit, again, just to be a very much self-aware about where you're at as a leader or as a founder and how you can make in subtle improvements, because that's what it's about. It's about moving forwards rather than staying stuck, because no one likes to be in no man's land, do we, ladies and gents? So that pretty sucks. Anyway, talking about staying stuck. Now, say, for example, I don't know, we take one of our listeners, for example, and they've been stuck for a number of years, and then they came across you like they do here on the podcast. Tell us a little bit more about what the before and after looks like. So when you work with the client, and I know that we talked about the, what do you call it? The 4 lenses, I think we talked about, didn't we? And maybe you could go into that.
Okay. So, just to bring back the previous framework. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about reality.
Yep.
So what does reality look like? Let's raise awareness. How do you see the world? So every single time, whether it's an individual or a team, my first set of things is how do we see the world? Because in the majority of cases, people are not on the same page. A primary human problem is being able to describe things in the same way. We have 2 decision-making systems. One is based on pattern recognition, so called the default mode network. And the second is our way of making decisions when we suffer cognitive dissonance. And that tends to be individualized.
Yes.
So in any group of people, you have to be able to expose what those differences are so that people can norm. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about what does reality look like? And we're going to look at that from an external point of view. What does the business look like in the marketplace? How is it situated against its competitors? What are the themes and trends and memes and, what's happening? And how is it performing? And then secondly, we're going to look at it internally. So how do you design all businesses that are just maths? So what have you done to design it like a machine? What does it do? How well does it do it? Right. And pretty much you can very, very quickly with any individual team, if they're honest, they will get you down to a very short, small number of things that are either going wrong or that are going right.
Yep.
Great. So now we've got an as is, a situation of what's going on. What do you want to do about that? This goes back to the what do you want. So if you're stuck, part of the problem is that people tend to be not clear, either internally about what I want or explicitly with their team, I want this thing.
Is that
But they're
because
drifting.
of the lack of direction, or is it a combination of the different things?
So a combination of different things, typically, so typical issues, not always, are what got you here will not get you there. So what made you successful is no longer working, right? I was really, really great at as a CEO, individual sales. So you're going around doing the selling, and then you hire a couple of salespeople and it doesn't work for you. Why doesn't it work for you? Because you're not doing it anymore and you haven't taught them how you did it, and you haven't set up a process to make it scalable, is an example, right? So what got you here will not get you there, number one. Number two, you have a problem, and that problem is something where you're not being honest with yourself about what reality is. We're too expensive. Our product is too complicated, etc. And this typically is tied to something that is personal to the people that are making the decision. It requires them to say no or to say goodbye to something, to admit that there has been a mistake, that something has changed, and to do something different. And what's actually not preventing them from moving forward is the problem. It's actually how they relate to the problem, right? It means that we've got to fire Joe. And we all like Joe, and Joe's been around for 5 years, and we don't want to say goodbye to Joe. And so it just continues. So we let it go. We just sit with it. A third is we can't actually diagnose effectively what is going on. Too much signal to noise. We have too many different opinions. So you can have different opinions. You can't have differences of fact. And so one of the problems ends up being we're not using the same set of facts about reality. So how do we get a really good view, a diagnosis, a root cause of what really is going on so that we can say, okay, it's A, not B.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Right. So there's a bunch of these things that happen. And so, great. What we're going to do with a bunch of people is, first of all, we're going to focus on reality. Then second, we're going to ask them, what do you want to be different? Typically, you want to get rid of the confusion and get to clarity. So we understand what the problem is, we align on what the options are, and we take action. What are we going to do next? Right. So that's number two. Number three is there's a bunch of that. Everybody is bringing stuff to the table, and you've only got so much time. So what you want to do, since human beings are creatures of time and space, is you want to say, okay, our one non-replaceable resource is time. So what are we going to spend time on? Who is going to spend time on what? We've got 168 hours a week. Nobody gets more, nobody gets less. So what are you spending the time on? What is important? Because what tends to happen is you have these conversations in a group, but then people go away and they go back to doing exactly what they were doing before. Yeah. So if you don't change the way people actually spend their time, they're set operating in the existing run rate of things. But you have a conversation and you want to do something about this. There has to be a sense of urgency, and you have to change people's priorities, but then you have to change their behaviors.
Yes.
The biggest behavior you have to change is how they're allocating and spending time and who they're spending time with. And then the last thing you want them to do is you want to turn that into something that's repeatable, right? This is, again, the scaling question of, unfortunately, people don't scale, processes do. So you want to turn these into rituals, into processes. You don't just want to do it once. You want to do it multiple times. Remember what I was saying at the beginning of the conversation about people who are successful in their careers? They A/B test things and they figure out what works and then they do it more. It's the same thing. You watch what happens with a group of individuals. What do they do well? And then you tell them, great, what did we learn from this? And how do I do that 5 times or 10 times or 20 times, not once? Because otherwise, again, they're going to default back to doing what they did before. Human being like routine. We like ritual. We like being in a rut.
A space of habit.
Right, habit. And so if you're a CEO, right, okay, first of all, I've got to realize what the reality of the situation is. Then I've got to decide what I want to be different. Then I have to actually get people, right, to align on a plan to do that. And the biggest part of the plan is actually changing the way they're spending time and who they're spending time with. And then finally, I got to get them to recognize what worked and what didn't work and turn that into a series of habits and practices.
It's really interesting about, and just through the time that we've spent time together, and even though you've done a lot of work in the strategy world, what's really kind of, I suppose, taken me by surprise is that most of the coaches that I come across, they're either mindset coaches or strategy coaches, but they're never a mix of the both. Just specifically for founders that are kind of listening to us right now, why is, say, I don't know, willpower, why cannot that be just the catalyst to just keep going? Why does it have to be a combination of the two?
Let's logically decompose this. Again, if you look at people that are successful,
yes,
it's not talent. There are a lot of very talented failures in the world. It's not motivation. There are a lot of massively motivated people who are not successful. So what is it that makes people successful, right? It's a way of being. Actually, interestingly, there's a little formula: be, do, have. You have to change the way you think about yourself, and you have to change the way the team thinks about itself, because being is doing, right?
Yes.
So we spend 90,000 hours on our careers, and that's a third of your life. And then that third of your life, that's your identity. For most men, if you show up somewhere, people don't ask who you are, they ask what you do.
Yep.
And it's the same for a team, right? It's kind of old-fashioned stoicism. Marcus Aurelius, know it by what it does.
I love it.
So this stuff hasn't changed. This is what I always go back to, is that it's not newfangled and wonderful. It's very, very basic.
Yes.
So first thing you're trying to figure out with somebody is very simply what it is they're trying to do. And you're trying to basically get them to see that as an identity.
Mm-hmm.
Who are you? That's mostly competency based. Yep. Okay, great. Well, if we can get to that, we can start to ask you questions. Curiosity is a superpower.
Mm-hmm.
About how well that's working for you. Right? Isn't that a great question?
That is a very good question. I love that.
How is that working for you? Oh, well, this isn't really working. Okay, well, why is that not working? Is it because of skill, or is it because of mindset? Could be either. I don't know how, or I can't find someone who knows how, or I feel like an imposter, or I don't have the energy or motivation, or etc. Okay, now we're effectively diagnosing. We're letting somebody, right, figuring it out for themselves. So we're taking something that's confusing and we're turning it into clarity.
Yes.
So the primary thing that you want people to do is to go through this self-discovery. Yeah. This analysis, this awareness. And why do you want to do this in an even-handed way? Because problems in the real world, right, are both external and internal. You can't get there. It's not sufficient to do it just by thinking about mindset. That doesn't help you with diagnosing whether you've got product market fit, whether your customers don't have sufficient NPS, whether you actually have the right margin structure, what your pricing should be, all of these are external market-based, right, math type problems. What should I do? Right? So coaches who just do mindset, that's lovely, but it's insufficient.
Surface level stuff.
It is. Well, I mean, look, there's a very famous coach, probably the most famous coach of all time, a guy called Bill Campbell, who was the coach to Steve Jobs and Eric Schmidt and all of these guys, right? And Bill was a former football coach at Columbia University. And then he was the head of sales at Apple back when Jobs was around. And he became the CEO of Intuit, and then retired from there and was a longtime board member and basically a business coach. And he called himself a business coach because he recognized that you have to do both, right? You have to diagnose effectively what's going on in the business, because we all live in systems. Yeah. We're all members of tribes trying to sort out problems. Great. So is that an individual thing or is it a collective thing? And so that lets you have an honest conversation about what is actually really going on and turn confusion into.
Interestingly enough, some of our founders here are going to be, they're already suspecting themselves and they tell themselves that they are the bottleneck within the business, right? If there was an exercise or something that they can do to help them to actually, I suppose, self-diagnose themselves to say, do you know what? Actually, I am the bottleneck and I need to do something about it. Is there anything that you would recommend, sure, an exercise or of some sort that could help them to kind of make that transitional phase?
Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned this earlier. I use a framework called the 4 lenses. So if you are a leader, the question is, how are you leading? So this is not specific to founders. It's true of any leader.
Okay.
Right. So what we want to do is we want to place you inside a framework by which you can diagnose what is going on and you can ask other people so they can provide reflection back to you.
Okay.
So now we have a calibrated systemic view of reality.
Yep.
So what are those 4 lenses? The first is, how are you leading strategically?
Mm-hmm.
So that is, if you're a CEO, the board and your shareholders. If you're a CXO, it's the CEO, board, right? And on up. So how am I leading strategically? How am I leading up?
Okay.
Again, let's remind ourselves that if you are trying to get something, right, what do you want? You have to know what you want, and then you have to be able to start taking purposeful actions to get it. And if you're going to lead, it's not just you as an individual contributor, it's you and a team, right? It goes from I to we. So how are you making those changes? What are you doing? How are you showing up? Leading strategically. First lens.
Great question. Mm-hmm.
Second lens, collaboratively.
Yep.
So who am I in relationship with? So one of the questions I ask people is, what are you responsible for?
Mm-hmm.
Right? A trigger question for a CEO is they end up answering, and it's immediately clear to them if you put it down on paper, they're responsible for too much.
Yeah, agreed.
Right? So you go,
classic.
Okay, here's the classic issue. You're trying to do too much, and therefore, trying to do more than 3 things, and therefore you're failing. And what are the things you're trying to do? You're not focused on the right things. So first of all, strategically, then collaboratively, who are you trying to get things done with, right? Nothing is done, because we're all members of systems, until 2 people say it's done.
Yeah.
You and the head of sales and marketing and product, right? It's all bound together. So if you sit people down and say, okay, how are you collaborating? What is it that you're trying to achieve? With whom? Now we can ask, how's that working for you? Right? Well, guess what? It's not. I absolutely hate the head of sales. I despise him, and I don't like spending any time with him. Well, is it any surprise then that is not working out? So maybe what we need to do is we need to take a look at that relationship and what could be done differently or better, etc. Okay.
Very
so
good.
Collaboratively, how are you leading in getting things done as part of a system?
Yep.
Thirdly, how are you driving your team, right, as a set of individuals and collectively? Both things. Third lens, individual and team leadership. How are you showing up in one-on-ones, right? Remember the know why and the care why. How are you creating know why and care why for that team, right? Both individually and collectively. So passion and purpose, vision, mission. Number 2, roles and structures. Is it clear what people are doing and how they work with each other? Number 3, creating psychological safety and cohesion as a team. Back to the football, right? The best teams are not a group of individuals and stars. They're a group of people who believe in something bigger and better than themselves.
Yep.
Right. Number 4, back to the business of being a team. How do we make decisions? How do we allocate resources? What am I doing as a leader to work with individuals and the collective to make that container better? And then lastly, how do I set standards? What are results and metrics? So, okay, I'm leading up. I'm leading collaboratively. Now I'm leading my individuals and teams. Last one, situational leadership. Customers, partners, advisors. These are all enormously influential in scaling and in success. So how do I show up in those circumstances? What am I doing to articulate to customers a long-term architectural vision? What am I doing to get the best out of advisors that I'm spending time and money on? What am I doing with partners to create an ecosystem that helps scale my business so I have to do less and they're doing more? If you get people to think through those four lenses, a lot of light bulbs start going on. Where am I spending time? Who am I spending time with? How effective is that time? What should I be doing differently? Right? You give people a way to be able to look at themselves and look at their situation and take purposeful action. So you're not just conceptualizing, you're immediately giving them a set of ways in which they can understand their reality and take action.
Love that. I really love those four lenses. And I think there's some really hard hitting questions that I think that a lot of our listeners would appreciate. That I certainly have written those down. And I think they're really good questions to ask of ourselves to be better, because that's the whole point of being better. And I think it's just a really great way to reframe. If you are stuck in a situation, of course, use those four lenses. I think it's a really good framework to be able to do that.
Yeah. I mean, you were saying, Adam, about my career as a strategist.
Yes.
So, without getting all classicist on everybody, the word strategy comes from strategos, which was the guy who was on the battlefield who decided where people went.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's about decision making. So strategy people think of as an abstract, as a plan. It's really about making decisions. Yeah. And I've always held that strategy is more about what you're not going to do than what you are going to do. Human beings, again, we haven't changed very much, and we see things much more easily in relief than we do actually in detail. Yeah. So it's easier to take a client and sit them down and say, tell me about all the things you don't want. You begin to clarify things because now the signal to noise, less noise, more signal. It's much easier to then begin to say, okay, if that's true, if that's what it is, what do you want to be different and how is it working for you now?
Yeah.
You can start to get to a decision-making framework very rapidly, which is strategy in action in motion rather than some conceptual long-term planning horizon exercise.
I think also from what you described as well, as I think one of the big benefits that I see, or certainly one of the things that really holds back a leader or a founder, is the fact that they can't make decisions quickly, which obviously slows things down dramatically. So I can really see how, from what you described here, we can then start to question our own decision making and why it moves more slowly in certain scenarios compared to others. I think what what we've talked about is really, really good. Now, I'm conscious of time and I want to make sure that I get into the coaching part. And I know this is the part where a lot of our listeners get very excited about, but I know that we're going to have a real brief time here. But here's the thing, so let's go into coaching mode, if I may, Julian, because I really love to kind of get your 2 cents on something here. Week in and week out, I speak to a lot of founders, a lot of operators, a lot of leaders, right? And so a lot of the founders that I end up having conversations, generally their revenue is in the 7-figure mark or thereabouts. And they've got a good team of them around them. And this is very much applicable to myself as well. But one of the things that has become apparent in my conversation is that they stay stuck in a particular scenario and it can go on for months, if not years, right? The revenue stays as it is. They stay stuck as individuals, and nothing really moves forward unless everything kind of goes through them. Yeah, and you talked about the spinning plates at the very, very beginning. To become a leader and not the operator that runs through it. Like, we all know that we need to make that transitional phase somehow. But I think one of the things that often comes up with, and one of the questions I often ask myself is, why is it that I struggle so difficultly to transition from the operator to that kind of leadership role? Why is it that, what is it that I'm fearing? Is it there's a void there in the middle that I am experiencing, or with the conversations that I am having with these founders, like, I just don't quite understand. Like, I'll give you a perfect example here. A few weeks ago, I was on a call with a founder, a female founder, been running her business in the accountancy sector for about, I don't know, it was about 10 years. She had really good revenue. Like, she was a really humble person. And then she just started to, I just asked her, so what does your typical day look like? And she started saying all these things which an operator would do. And I'm like, well, you're never going to be able to kind of,
Sure.
hit the ceiling. Do you know what I mean? Make that sudden jump of leap of faith. And I just thought, like, going back to our conversation now, like, if she was here listening to this conversation, what is it that she needs to do to kind of make that kind of leap of faith of such? Like, what is it that we need to do to try to break the cycle, or kind of avoid that fear of the void, if you want to call it that?
So the way to coach this is do what you were just doing, right? Diagnose what's going on.
Yes.
What's the problem, right? The problem is scaling. And so, great, I've got revenue, but I'm selling things, it sounds like.
Yes.
Everything is custom. This is one of the classic founder scaling problems, right? Is that I built a product, but I'm more than 50% of it is custom, or I'm selling to customers that are units of one.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm in the sales game, but my sales motion is not scalable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so what you find out is that you have long sales cycles. They're relatively complex. They're individual to a particular customer. And what you're not finding is the pattern.
Yeah.
So the problem, right, is that you have a way of solving the problem, but it's not scalable, right? It has a threshold.
Is it because of this fear of letting go? Do you think that that's also a reason for that?
So I'm going to come to that. So again,
Okay.
there's the problem and there's how you relate to the problem.
Yes.
So the first thing is the problem itself, is recognition that my unit economics, right, just don't work. My cost of sales is fixed. Sorry, it continues to expand with my sales. And so I don't scale.
Okay.
Right? I can't sell 20, 30, 40, 50 of this. I keep selling ones and twos.
That's true. Okay.
So,
That
okay,
makes
so
sense.
that's the problem. Why? Why does this continue? Well, okay, now we get to the second piece, right? That it's about how you're spending time and about how you think about this, not the problem itself. So you've been successful in solving the first problem, which was get somebody to buy something. And to solve the problem, you need to do things differently. You can't do the same thing, which is selling it one at a time. You need to sell multiple of them. And to sell multiple of them, the CEO can't be the salesperson.
No.
So you need to do things in a different way. So what's preventing you from doing that? Well, one is you don't know how to. So there's a skill issue.
Yep.
Secondly, it's a will issue, a mindset issue, which is I feel like an imposter and I'm worried about doing things differently because this has been successful. So I'm getting $5 to $10 million a year, but I can't get to $40 million. And so I'd rather have what I got today, right, and hold on to that than make the leap to be able to do things differently and move into the future and scale. Because, right, and so as a personality and as a team, we're going to stick doing the things that we do. Now, the piece of the puzzle that unlocks this, which you were just referring to, is what would you do differently if you wanted to solve the problem? So we know what you're doing today. What would you do differently? So who would you have to spend time with? Because it's not on your own. You can't solve it on your own. Well, it's not the people around the table because they don't have the skills. So you got to go hire somebody different who knows how to do that, right? That's number one. Number two, how would you spend time with those people? Well, I wouldn't be spending time on these individual sales calls that I'm doing and operating the thing. I would change and I would do this. So now we're getting to actionable things that you could do, not some grand plan, but a list of things that you would need to do differently to solve the problem. Can you do that, Mr. CEO, Miss CEO? Is that something you feel enabled to do? Do you feel competent, capable, that you've got the support, etc., to do that list of things? Now you've broken it down into nuggets, bite-sized, achievable things. Yes, yeah, I could do that. Okay, great. Why don't you do it? And that becomes the real interesting question, right?
That's the big multi-million-dollar question.
You can lead the horse to water,
yeah,
but you can't always get them to drink. So that's how I would coach that situation is let's sit in it. Let's diagnose it. Let's take a look at what you can really do. Real actions, pragmatic, practical, purposeful actions. Are you prepared to make that change? Or do you just want to sit where you are? What's the cost of doing nothing? What's the cost of you staying where you are? To you, to the team around you, yeah? To your sense of self, because what we do is who we are. So what does that mean for you? So what has bigger weight? Staying where you are or moving forward?
It's a great question, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, and it is the perfect opportunity to wrap up today because I think we could go off on many different tangents. The reason why I decided that now is a good time to finish here is because I want that to kind of just sit with you a little bit here and let it kind of, I suppose, settle in your subconscious a little bit. Now, you may have a sleepless night tonight. I'm sorry about that. Not really. But I want it to kind of like just get you to think about that and, get yourself a notebook and pen out and just, there's a lot of questions that Julian is kind of helping you to coach your subconscious more than anything else about how to kind of move forwards. And I say this to everybody, right? If you knew all the answers, you wouldn't be listening to this podcast, number one. Okay. And number two, like if we knew all the answers, everyone doesn't know the answers is my point. We're always learning. Even the top leaders in the world that are out there, they're always learning. They're always growing. They're always so I just wanted to allude that. Second of all, Julian, this has been a great episode. Thank you very much. It's been a lot of fun, right?
Oh, absolutely. Always great to talk to you, Adam. And hopefully this has been interesting and stimulating for your audience.
Absolutely. And for you guys, if you haven't already checked out Julian's bestseller, it's called Navigating Your Next, which you can go and find on Barnes & Noble or Waterstones, wherever you are in the world. Of course, you can go check that out. And feel free to connect with Julian on social media, which I think he's mainly on LinkedIn, of course. And by all means, personalize a message, say that you've listened to the podcast. And so thank you so much for joining us on today's episode, guys. And just one last ask before we go. If you have enjoyed today's episode, please do me a favor. Head over to Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. Leave a comment, subscribe, and say hi or leave a review. So thanks so much, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. Take care. Cheers now. Bye-bye.